Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to what if the United States didn't exist, and I don't know if this is going to go into just the history or if it will go into sort of the present day and how it's led up to things now. But some people will see this as a very bad thing. Some people would see this as a good thing. But obviously, a lot of inventions, a lot of cultural things, a lot of music, just a lot of things in general that it comes from the fact that the United States exists, and it probably comes down to the fact that, I mean, maybe not, but because so many people from different countries and different cultures kind of moved to this same place, forced there, or they moved there from their own will, like wanting to move, it slowly evolved to a point where it led to it where it is now, and all these inventions, all these cultural things, music, this and that, all came from that. And it's a fascinating thing because it's just like, it sort of fits like, obviously it's how a country was created, but it feels like a sort of experiment. Like, you'd see this sort of experiment, like moving all these people somewhere else, someone from this region of the world, someone from that region of the world, all moving to this one land area and trying to build a community. And was sort of the product of that. Obviously that wasn't how it happened, but it's fascinating. But we're going to check this out. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. If you want to see more reactions like this, let me know in the comments. And yeah, links are also in the description for my Patreon, where you can find reactions to many different things like TV series, films, music reactions, plus a lot of YouTube videos that I can't post. And yeah, all that good stuff. So yeah, links are in the description. There's probably over 250 videos on there now. So yeah, you will see a lot of reactions there if you're interested. But let's jump into this and see what if the United States didn't exist. And obviously this is like based on, it's not factual stuff, but I just find this stuff interesting to see someone's perspective.
Grand scheme of human history, the United States of America is an incredibly new country. From its culture and the scale of its military and economic might, the US has been influential since its inception. In the span of just 2 centuries, it went from a disunified band of colonies into the strongest power that has ever been seen. Even by its creation, the United States drastically changed the course of history. So, as a thought exercise, what if it didn't exist? What if, in an alternate timeline, the United States of America never existed? Opens up a lot of questions, doesn't it? For this alternate timeline, let's go back to the 1770s, the American Revolution, as tension grew between the colonies and the British. In this alternate scenario, war begins. The American rebels fight against the British regulars. There were numerous occasions the US could have been defeated. All it simply took was not having the aid of one foreign ally, an ally who would love to get back at the British. Yes, that's right, the French. The French involvement in the American Revolution saved the rebellion, and without it, the militias surely would have lost. And this wasn't a small contribution. The French involvement meant funding to rebels, supplies, guns, men, and ships, particularly to distract the British naval fleet. And France wanted revenge so badly, they put themselves in massive debt just to aid the Americans. This would come back to haunt them later. I'll talk about that soon. Say in this alternate scenario, France is more fiscally responsible and realize they can't win a war without tanking their finances, and the US is left out to dry. After years of holding out against Native American, British, and German regulars, it's just too much. So the rebellion crumbles. The British seize control, and most of the Continental Congress goes into exile or are arrested. Perhaps negotiations occur between the two to make amends, but this is hard to predict. In this alternate timeline, the revolution is crushed, and the experiment that was the United States of America is in the history books, a failed rebellion over anger with the British Parliament. It can't be left unsaid that there is still bitterness among a sizable portion of the colonial population. There's still this culture within the colonies that resent the loss. While the war ends...
Is there? I mean, there's stuff on Twitter and stuff. I don't think anyone is actually fussed by it. I mean, it's something that was so long ago, and we're not even going to have relative, like, you can go back 6 generations of people that probably were not affected by it, but I don't know. I see stuff on Twitter, and it's like people joking with each other, but it's just Twitter. Like, that's just how it is. But I don't think anyone actually cares about, I don't know, not having control of the US or the, I don't know, whatever it is. But maybe I'm wrong. There are some strange individuals out there, so maybe I'll be in for a shock.
Majority of American colonists simply move on with their lives. There's still a mentality similar to the South will rise again. The relationship between the two is forever changed. The 13 colonies were...
What does he mean from back in the day when it happened? Maybe that's what he means.
Pretty kind of different from the rest of the British realms. but now going into the 1790s and the 19th century, it would be painted as the rogue colony which still has an independent tendency. There are immediate changes that result from the US not existing. When the US won the Revolution, in the Treaty of Paris, it was given all of the land east of the Mississippi River. In this alternate scenario, the 13 colonies simply remain the 13 colonies. This changes multiple things, including the path of the British imperial ambitions and the politics of North America as a whole. Let's talk relationships. In this alternate timeline, the American colonists don't have the best relationship with their neighbors. Catholic French Quebec is to the north and would be despised by the deeply Puritan colonists, and the numerous Native Americans to the west would be an issue as well, except for a few tribes, but I'll discuss that later. In our timeline, when the US was born, Quebec was pushed up to where it is today, and the natives were under American control. But with control of this land under the British Parliament, American colonists are sort of stuck on the coast. In this scenario, Canada, as we think of it, simply doesn't exist. What eventually became Canada had a large...
So really, the US I don't know how possible this would have been, but they could have had the land of Canada, right? If they sort of had the ambition, or not ambition, but like whatever it was, they had the want to get even more land. They could have probably taken a lot of that land in Canada. Imagine that, how big the US would be then, and like how many more people there would be and everything. God damn, that would be crazy.
Population boost after the war from loyalists who fled the independent United States. It's said that these loyalists were the initial boost that brought Canada as a territory for Britain, being happy to be under the king's rule and all. But without independence, these loyalists stay in the colonies, so Canada doesn't have an influx of English-speaking Brits. But you know what it does have? French Canadians. This land was once under the control of the French in something known as New France, but France lost this land after the 7 Years' War. French colonists were allowed to stay and keep their culture as long as they stayed loyal to the British king. Thus, Quebec was born. In this alternate scenario, Quebec never loses this land and stays incredibly large, one that takes up all of the Great Lakes, the Ohio River, and goes up into the northern seas of the Atlantic. Had Quebec continued to be allowed to rule these lands, the Midwest and the Great Lakes are French-speaking, deeply Catholic territories. But there is a third culture as well. Most of the land south of the Ohio River is entirely populated by Native American tribes. If the treaty with the natives continued, then the British protect native land rights in the Deep South. Inside this territory was what was known as the 5 civilized tribes by the Americans: the Creek, Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Seminole. They were called this because of their general acceptance of many colonial practices into their society, and the colonists held by comparison pretty good views of the natives as well, in comparison to other minorities. It was often thought that if the native tribes simply adopted European culture, they'd be on equal footing with the colonists. As decades go by in this alternate timeline, interaction with British Americans and the Quebec Canadians slowly alter these 5 tribal societies into adapting more European practices. Not much can be said other than the native tribes of the South remain prominent members who may eventually adopt colonial ways. Who knows? It's commonly taught in school that the American Revolution had an immediate impact throughout the world, and that's true, just not in the way we think. Remember when I said France was a key ally to the American rebels? That aid required money. That money had to come from somewhere, and the French monarchy didn't have it. The monarchy put itself into a large amount of debt. This debt created a financial crisis, and without getting into too many details, this was the crisis which led to the chain of events that eventually brought down the monarchy, led to the French Revolution, and eventually Napoleon. In this alternate timeline, Britain crushes the American rebels since France doesn't get involved.
Come on.
Sure, the French monarchy is still in debt, but without this financial crisis, because no war, they can kick that can down the road by at least a few decades. By doing so, Napoleon's opportunity to seize power doesn't happen. The Napoleonic Wars never occur. The Holy Roman Empire is not obliterated by the French invasion, and the hundreds of little German states aren't reorganized into 30 with the Confederation of the Rhine. There is never a rise of Prussia, and so the German Empire is never formed. It can't be underestimated how much Napoleon not coming to power affected global history, as Napoleon's forces invaded Spain and Portugal, bringing their colonies into chaos. In this alternate timeline, without the United States, there is no immediate military catastrophe to weaken these empires. They remain prominent, and powerful. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, the New World is still prime real estate for European colonization. The British and Spanish are pretty much the only ones left, with the Russians in Alaska, which leaves New Spain in the question. It's doubtful the Spanish would have risked war over the territory if the British wanted it enough. The British expand slowly across the North American continent. However, what changes is how they interact with the native tribes instead of the Americans. Manifest Destiny was a uniquely American ideal that wouldn't exist in this alternate timeline. Instead, it's likely the British would interact with the native tribes and give them autonomy, essentially splitting North America up into native-dominated provinces in the West, with white colonists. This is the undoubtable effect of the United States losing the revolution and not existing. The transformation of British imperial policy around the world. Think of it like soul-searching, but with warships. Losing the United States ended the First Empire, and the British funded exploration ships to go find new lands to settle. This led to the discovery of Australia and New Zealand. It also lent to the British to become more invested in conquering lands in Africa and all of India. With North America, though, Britain simply invests in this massive territory of land. As industrialization arrives, the British banned slavery and the slave trade as a whole. This would create extreme unrest in the United States. But the British still banned slavery, and the issue is finished by the 1830s. The British have access to the bountiful amounts of oil, natural gas, and coal left untapped in North America. The change here is the balance in power in the world. Not only that, but the balance of power in Europe. Germany remains divided for the entire 19th century, meaning World War I and World War II never occur. Yet some alternate war probably would happen. As for North America, the British Dominion of North America is a diverse land. The 13 colonies still exist, and are culturally different from the rest of the continent. Native Americans make up a predominant section of Western North America, while white colonists dominate the western coast. This is, however, simply one scenario. We'll never truly know what will happen. This is just one thought exercise. The United States has always been a land where people from around the world have came to create a new life. And since I'm here, and I have a life, that means that at some point in history, my ancestors had to have gotten on that boat, or flew as I like to imagine, and just stayed in the United States until generations later, I was born. I've always kind of wondered where my ancestors came from, so when sponsors...
Oh, it's going to a sponsor. Go on, get in his money. But it's true though, like everyone, pretty much everyone living in the US now, other than the native Indians, have come from somewhere in Europe or, well, yeah, it's probably majority Europe, but obviously some from Asian countries, African countries as well. And yeah, it's just fascinating how all these people from all around the world are in one like hotbed for all of them to live. 400 million guns would be homeless. Fuck's sake. There's an alternate history hub who's doing an episode on what if the United States existed. This enraged George Washington's father, who punished him severely. Wait, is that from the oversimplified videos? I think it is, right? Dude, yeah, it is. Fuck's sake. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. And yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely better that the US does exist because of a lot of things now. Obviously, bad things have happened, but a lot of better things have happened as well. And I think it's helped overall, you know. But it would be fascinating, like, where would Britain be at this point in time? Obviously, I feel like the country's in a pretty good place in the grand scheme of things, like in terms of compared to other countries. But would it be richer? Would it be more powerful? I don't know. But that's how it is in another dimension, you know. But we'll never know. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. And until next time, like, subscribe.